The scientific data tell us that we should all be getting anywhere from 150 minutes to 200 minutes per week minimum of zone 2 cardio.
Well, I definitely don't do that. But today, we're gonna start changing all of that. So here's the plan. For the next 30 days, I'm committing to getting 150 to 200 minutes of zone 2 cardio every single week. Well, here goes nothing.
Day 1 of zone 2, it feels so freaking slow.
And unfortunately, that was the trend for all of week 1. Week 1 was all about learning. I felt like I had to retool my brain to learn how to run in a completely new way, which I know sounds ridiculous, but that's just how it felt. So obviously, yes, the actual running itself was the same, but the fact that you were running for a heart rate instead of a pace and a time instead of a distance just completely required retooling. Yes, the actual running was the same, but trying to keep a slower pace, like we're talking 3 minutes per mile slower, was a huge struggle. I also noticed that my Apple Watch was not doing a great job of keeping a consistent reading of my heart rate. It would have my heart rate jumping all over the place instead of slowly increasing or decreasing. Now, I'm no cardiovascular expert, but I do believe my heart rate wasn't jumping by 20 beats per minute, just like that. So, did a little research on the internet, and it turns out that wrist heart rate monitors are not super reliable because the blood flow at your wrist is not great for them to pick up on and read. So instead, I invested in a Scosche Rhythm R+ 2.0 heart rate monitor. Terribly named product, but it's actually super good. It's an upper arm heart rate monitor that gets much more consistent results, and that made a world of difference in getting accurate readings. Now I could actually watch my heart rate gradually change in response to my pace, and then alter my pace as needed instead of going way too high or having a jump way too high on me and having to stop and walk, which was super frustrating to do. I also learned that what I listened to had a huge impact on my ability to stay in the right zone. Listening to my usual kind of pump up music for running caused me to constantly just have my pace drift higher and higher and then push me out of zone 2. So I had to switch over to podcasts and audiobooks to help me better control my pace and heart rate. The other nice thing about the zone 2 workouts this week was that because they're lower intensity workouts, I actually had energy left over at the end of the day. I kind of felt energized by the run instead of drained by the run. So I had energy to do lots of other things instead of just kind of feeling like a potato the rest of the day because I was beat from my workout. So all in all, I'd say week 1 was a success. On to week 2. Hold on a minute, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here. What are the benefits of zone 2 and why is it so important that it's worth dedicating an entire month of training to? Zone 2 is training at a low heart rate and it's really good for boosting your cardiovascular fitness because it helps you use fat instead of carbohydrates as a source of energy. And this helps improve your endurance, your overall general stamina, and recovery. Essentially, zone 2 training is that base layer that you build upon with all of your other exercise, and by having a really strong base layer, your peaks get much higher and your performance can improve that much more. All right, back to the show.
Week 2, here we go. So this week I changed it up a little bit, and instead of doing a lot of shorter workouts in zone 2, I decided to do a couple hour-long sessions instead. And I find this format a lot better. It just helps me get them out of the way. It gives me time to do other types of exercises that I'm interested and excited about without sacrificing the goals of this challenge. My zone 2 pace still feels incredibly slow, but at least I'm finding it easier now to find the correct pace, lock in, and keep it going instead of having to constantly check my watch over and over and over. This week I also learned the impact that external factors can have on the quality of your runs and your ability to stay in zone 2. The first lesson that I had to learn the very, very hard way is that caffeine too close to your workout will make it incredibly hard to keep your heart rate under control. And the second one is that having proper nutrition and hydration will make it so much easier to stay in zone 2. If you're dehydrated, damn, it's hard. It's real hard. Now, obviously it's well known that caffeine just raises your heart rate naturally, so that should have been obvious. I don't know why it wasn't, but it took me a little while to figure that one out. And number 2, same thing with dehydration. If you're dehydrated, your blood's thicker, it's harder for your heart to pump it, thereby raising your heart rate. So once I figured that out and was able to make sure I focused on my hydration and when I consume my caffeine, life got a whole lot easier. All right, we're on the last run of week 3. So this week has been weird. I think it's been the best week in a lot of ways. I've had some of my best zone 2 runs where I could just effortlessly keep the pace, a quick pace, and zone 2, which is awesome, man. It's making it feel like this is worth it. But then on the opposite, the exact flip side, I feel like the cumulative effect of all of this extra zone 2 running has like finally caught up with my body. My body just aches, my muscles are sore. It's just finally wearing me down a bit.
Which in turn led to a lot of stretching and rolling. And don't make fun of my form, I don't actually know what I'm doing, but it really feels good and helps. And a whole ton of these protein shakes. But honestly, all of this recovery work is about the only thing keeping me going and allowing me to finish this challenge. So, I guess on to week 4. For week 4, I managed to completely corrupt my footage, so instead enjoy this lovely voiceover. Honestly though, in week 4, I really hit my groove. The long, slow runs were a great way to clear my head. I didn't really have to think about it any longer. I was just able to go out and pump out the miles and stay at a nice, smooth, low heart rate pace. This is also when I kind of figured out my best approach was to hit zone 2 in 3 to 4 training sessions, knock it all out, and then take a couple days to rest before, another long run or a cross training or whatever other type of exercise I wanted to fit in. And along with getting comfortable with the pacing and the mileage, I also finally really started to get dialed in on my hydration and nutrition and the demands that were being put on my body of this extra running. So everything kind of finally meshed together and it started to feel really good. And of course, now it's the end of the challenge. All right, so now I've completed my whole month of zone 2 training, but like, what were the results? Did I get anything out of it? Let's start with the anecdotal evidence. So I definitely feel healthier, and I feel like I can walk the dogs and play with the kids without getting short of breath or an elevated heart rate. And I feel good on my runs. Even a long run now, it feels much more effortless, and like I can go for further without feeling taxed or drained. So anecdotally, great, things feel good. But before we call this just a raging success at that, I want to look at some of the facts and figures behind this challenge. So using my Apple Watch and the Apple Health data, I tracked a few metrics to see how my body responded to this month of training. I tracked my VO2 max, my weight, my resting heart rate, and my walking heart rate to see how they changed throughout the course of the challenge, or in fact didn't change. All right, so let's start at the top. My VO2 max, which is just a measure of essentially your cardiorespiratory fitness, was 45.6 at the start of this challenge and 46.1 at the end, with a 0.5 point improvement. My resting heart rate was 52 beats per minute at the start of the challenge and 50 beats per minute at the end of the challenge, which was an improvement of 2 beats per minute. My walking heart rate was 88 beats per minute at the start and 88 beats per minute at the end, so essentially just flat, no improvement there. And my weight was 181.2 pounds at the start of the challenge and 180 pounds at the end, so I ended up losing about 1.2 pounds this month. Okay, so having all this data is great and it can certainly start to paint a picture, but context is key here. And I kind of want to start by addressing the weight one. So I didn't go into this challenge thinking I was going to lose weight. It wasn't a weight loss challenge in any way. And honestly, the 1+ pounds I lost is probably just marked up to just general weight fluctuations throughout everyone's lives. So I don't chalk that up to anything. I was still eating to fuel my body. I wasn't trying to lose weight. So I kind of want to throw that one aside. I put it in there because zone 2 training is supposed to use fat as a fuel source. So I thought maybe I would see some weight decrease. I didn't. That's fine. I wasn't trying to, but we can kind of toss that one aside. Essentially, it was a non-factor. When I look at the other categories that I was tracking, honestly, I'm a bit disappointed. I really don't see a whole lot of change there outside of improvements that you might see from just continuing to do cardiovascular exercise in any form over the course of an entire month. I was really expecting, or at least hoping, to see one of these categories see a major shift that I could chalk up to zone 2 helping me out a ton. And honestly, when I pulled these numbers and I looked at them for the first time, I was actually extremely disappointed and I kind of felt defeated by this challenge. So as any good YouTube fake scientist would do, I went looking for other metrics that would help prove my point. And I actually found one really key thing, and that is 2 different 4-mile runs. One I did at the beginning before the challenge started, and one I did after the challenge ended while I was editing and making this video that you're watching. And I think it really does paint a picture. As you can see on screen now, I've put each of these 2 4-mile runs side by side. After this challenge, I was able to run 30 seconds per mile faster while gaining an additional 56 feet of elevation, all while maintaining a lower heart rate. And I think this is the best metric I could use for this challenge because it is a side-by-side comparison of 2 runs. One where I ran faster, up more hills, and harder, but my heart rate stayed lower. And I think that paints the picture perfectly. this did help me build that aerobic base for the exercise I was going for, which was running. So I don't think my anecdotal evidence was complete hogwash. I think this helps prove my point, and I do think there were some tangibly good results. All right, so all of that said, done. You've watched this whole video. Thank you for making it this far. You should definitely subscribe. That aside, let's conclude this thing. Going forward, I do plan to keep Zone 2 in my training arsenal. However, it's definitely not going to be the extent to which I've done it for the last month. I think I'm going to try to put in 1, 2, maybe 3 workouts a week that are on the Zone 2 scale. And I'm not going to worry so much about exact minutes. It's just I want to incorporate that and continue to build that aerobic base because I do find it helpful, and I do think it's made me a more healthy and active individual. But I don't think it's worth making that the sole focus of my exercise. I have limited time to exercise, and I don't want to just strictly do it on slow, low heart rate training. Now, let me know down below if you've tried this and if you saw any results, or your results were similar to mine where you had some anecdotal evidence, but maybe not the hard numbers to back it up. I would love to hear your story.